So the name of this lesson is Springfield and the History of American Immigration, where we are going to investigate a key idea of United States history through the lens of a Simpsons episode, which is a pretty good way to look at history. And our starting point is a quote from George Washington. And here's what he wrote. He wrote, "The bosom of America is open to receive not only the opulent and respected stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions, whom we shall welcome to a participation of all of our rights and privileges." So if you look at what President Washington said, what does this mean? Think about that. And after we thought about this for a while, we moved on to some reflection questions. And these questions are the following. Number one, what are your present views regarding immigration policy in America today? If you have any at all. You might not know anything, and that's fine not to know. Some of you have some very strong opinions. What do you know from prior learning about America's history regarding immigration? Have you learned about immigration in another class or through your travels? Curious to what you already know. Third question, what is your personal story on how your family arrived in America? And related to this, was it a push or pull migration? A push is a negative. It's a force. You have to leave for some negative circumstance. Whereas a pull migration is something more positive. It's enticing. You might have one of each. You have two different parents. You might have two different stories. And then as a class, we're going to brainstorm this. What are the upsides or positive aspects of receiving immigrants into the country? And what are the quote-unquote downsides or challenges that stem from receiving immigrations? This is not a simple idea, and I think any objective person will realize there are some good things and some challenging things. So think about this, and what did you come up with? And I put some photos of some fairly modern pictures demonstrating both sides, very pro-immigration, very anti-immigration. And in all of my years of teaching immigration, it tends to wind up like this. These are just general expressions of sentiments, very simplistic, but generally what I've seen, the upsides. Immigrants bring their talents and drive to succeed. If you have talented people from other places and they come to America, hey, we can utilize their talents. Number two, immigrants fill necessary jobs, thus improving the economy. And immigrants bring new cultures that result in cultural diffusion, blending in terms of food and in terms of language and in terms of all these sorts of things that diversify our country, if you feel it to be an upside. Now, the challenges that I normally hear about are logistical challenges, such as where are we going to put these people? How are we going to give these people health care? How are we going to educate these people? There might be too many people that we can handle, this sort of thing. Another challenge that I hear, there's a feeling that they take jobs and resources from other people. Some people feel that way. And then the third item, there's concern that bad individuals enter the country causing problems, whether that be crime or what have you. So however you feel, you are entitled to feel, but this is a general expression of how people tend to look at immigration. So after this, we're going to watch the cartoon, and it's called Apu About Nothing, first aired in 1996. And continue to work on your worksheet as you watch this. And I chunked it up into some parts. Now, the first part is the bear. Now, the bear, it's very comical how they go about doing this, but it's symbolic of the unforeseen challenges that people face. This could be a natural disaster, an economic downturn, a rise in crime. And when you have these outside circumstances, government must address it. And in this episode, it happened to be a bear. And then we see fears getting stirred up. Okay, we see Homer stirring up the pot of immigrants being problematic, this sort of thing. Okay, so let's look at some primary sources, and you can see these political cartoons and these photos from the past. And if you look at this, you see this massive immigration from Europe, and here's Uncle Sam making sure you only have a small amount, a select amount. Here's no Irish need apply. And you can see this anti-immigrant sentiment from 1910. That's a long time ago. You see this political cartoon of the Chinese, very anti-Chinese. And this one doesn't leave a whole lot to the imagination. Japs keep moving. This is a white man's neighborhood. Moral of the story is this anti-immigration, this fear of immigrants, is a long-standing idea in this country. I think that's safe to say. So then we look at the governmental reaction. So Mayor Quimby faces a conundrum, and this is a conundrum all politicians face: taxation, the cost versus the benefits. Quimby actually handles it well with the bear tax, but people say, hey, we shouldn't pay taxes. However, was the benefit worth it? You have constituents to appease. Whether they are rational or not, you have to appease your constituents. And then there's these hot button issues that will politically make or break you. And you see Quimby scapegoating on the immigrants in order to save his political self. It was actually well played on a very Machiavellian level, if you think about it. So anyhow, then we see the xenophobia spreading throughout Springfield. We see Uter getting picked on by the other kids, where groundskeeper Willie defends him. And there have been many anti-immigrant movements throughout United States history. And Lisa's objections are very rational, they're very logical, but it's drowned out in the hysteria. And oftentimes that happens in times of mass hysteria. And then we look at the part of the immigrant story where Apu is trying to assimilate into America, and he gets a fake passport, and he changes his name. He's wearing a baseball jersey and a cowboy hat. So there's two fundamental ways of looking at immigration: melting pot versus tossed salad. Well, where a melting pot, it blends all together into this one American ideal, versus a tossed salad. A tossed salad is part of the same dish, but a tomato has a different quality than an olive, and an olive has a different quality than a carrot. And these two ways of looking at things, you see the first part of Apu's story being more the melting pot archetype. And then you see him moving on to more of a tossed salad sort of identity, where he wants to keep his Indian heritage, but he still loves America, and he is struggling to find that balance. And every immigrant has to decide that in terms of language, customs, what they eat, how they dress, how they identify, and there's no easy answer. And Apu struggled in this area, like every immigrant struggles in this area. And then we see Apu moving into citizenship, going through legal channels. And I posed the question on the worksheet: how much should be entailed to becoming a citizen? Now, according to the Citizenship and Immigration Services, there is a 10-step process. It's fairly involved. However, it is doable. There is a legal process. And if you want to check it out, the link is there, and you can see whether that is adequate or not. And then the final part of the episode is the resolution. And I'm going to use some quotes from the episode where Homer said, "We take this country for granted. They are doing," and they are meaning the immigrants, are doing the hard jobs. Immigrants are the glue that hold together the gears of our society. I don't know if you agree with Homer or not, but that's how the episode ends. And moving away from the cartoon into something a little more academic, there are three charts that I want you to look at, and you can look at the waves of immigration. You can see tons of immigration, cut off, tons of immigration. I had a professor describe it as a stoplight, where in American history sometimes we are red light, don't show up, yellow light, a few, then green light, hey, show on up. So you can see how this has been a constant wave of up and down throughout our history. The second chart shows the same sort of thing, that we have times of enormous amounts of immigration and times where we do not. And bear in mind, these correlate to other areas in U.S. history, like the Industrial Revolution and what have you. And then this third chart, if you look at real growth in U.S. gross domestic product, you can see, through the times of immigration, the GDP has gone up, which provides some evidence on an economic level immigration might be a good thing. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good on a sociological level or a cultural level, that sort of thing. I'll leave that up to you. Okay, so that's an explanation of the lesson. I hope you enjoyed the cartoon, and I hope this helped you out if you were struggling with some of the questions on the worksheet. So thank you for watching.